Here we are, guys. This is excited to be here with you all today. One more time, as usual, this channel is a percussion education in its scope, right? And today we're super excited because we have come in the state of Texas and in public school. We have come to a very exciting time, and that is the Texas All State Music. It just recently got released, and that's the talk right now amongst all the educators. We're texting each other back and forth. What do you think of this measure, and what do you think of this other etude and this one measure? What sticking are you using? We're all trying to gain as much knowledge as possible to be able to help our students in our studios and share it with our other friends amongst the state. And as usual, VPF tries to have a yearly educational stream where we invite the professor, the educator that gets to select the music. And today we are hugely honored to be able to have with us Mr. Bobby Lopez, who was the gentleman that selected the music for this year. He will be discussing some of the music, right, and any pointers that he might have, any little pitfalls that we might face. And the neat thing about this stream, if you're watching it real time, you can customize it to your needs, to your studio's needs, because you'll be able to put your input your questions, right, as comments. I will be able to see them, and then we will share them with Mr. Lopez so that he can answer them, any questions that you might have. And then the neat thing about it is it will be there, right? It'll be saved, and you'll be able to come back, check the video, sit with your students, look what he said about this. So it's going to help us a lot, a lot. So without further ado, let's bring in Mr. For some reason,
There we go. Can
looks
you hear
like
me?
it won't pop up. Bobby?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
There we go, sir. There we go.
Great. Awesome.
Sir, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
We are honored to have you here today, sir. So, um, um, can you give us maybe a snippet, sir, what you will be discussing, what we can look forward to, right? That way we can set our minds for the next minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to talk about the All-State music with you guys, and certainly answer any questions that may come up with it. As a longtime educator, having gone through the process myself as a kid, there's always questions about you know how the music is interpreted, and what we try to do in our on our side is try to make that as clear as possible for everybody, so that the interpretation is kind of clear across the board. But as everybody knows, it becomes a little bit different when you're sitting there with five or six people on the judging panel, and then discussions ensue, and you know sometimes the interpretation gets changed to whatever those judges agree upon in that moment. And I only say that because I've experienced that as well when I was high school, middle school, educator, and you would sit there, and then all of a sudden we were talking about how a triplet should be interpreted, and that changes everything, so hopefully some of these things become a little clearer, and shed some light on some of that stuff.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, exiting stage left, and we will leave the stage for you. Uh, we will be taking notes. We will be following along with music. There are some people that have come and joined us live. Number of people that will be watching the replay. I've noticed that happens a lot. So the views start going up, and then they start. So, any questions that come up, pop up on the screen, and then I'll share it with you, and then you can discuss it. So the stage is yours, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gilbert. All right. So, I guess, one of the things that I want to start with is, maybe kind of an early question that I had, probably when the day the music came out, was what was my motivation. Um, Andres Aya, I see you, brother. I see you. Um, One of the questions that I had was, what was the motivation for selecting the music that I did? And, you know, um, as an educator and as a player, we try to prepare our students at the college university level, to obviously to be good players, to be great players, try to understand music overall, not just our percussion music, but also, to become technically proficient, and to be able to understand what it is to execute music at a high level, which is what I think the focus is for the All-State music as well. And so, for percussionists, particularly, I thought that I would try to find etudes that would balance out technical proficiency with musicality. And my focus, um, always seems to always go back to sounds. And there are so many things that dictate the sound, and the sound that you make, and the sound that comes out, right? And so a lot of what I thought about was, I really would love for the judging panels across the state um, to be able to adjudicate these students based on the sounds that we're making versus how many notes they're playing. And that's just my opinion and my interpretation of what I think it should be. And of course, that was left up to me, being a selector. And so I feel like, that is what my focus was going to be. So, I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys want to pop up and ask a question about something specific or something in general. But certainly, that was the focus of my selecting the etudes that I did, for the All-State music. So I can continue on that, or I can field some questions. Okay, well, I'll just continue talking so there isn't very much dead time, I suppose. Gilbert, I think your mic is off. I couldn't hear what you said. There's already been some questions that I can kind of field a little bit. Dre asked, how do we share out of the stream? I can tell you what, at least what from my end, what happened on StreamYard was I had a little tab on the top that said share your stream. So I don't know if you have that or see that or not, but that was in the upper right hand corner for me, and I was able to link that to my Facebook. So one of the things that I did not know about the process, and slowly working in certain things like state solo and ensemble, and certainly this process as well as I didn't know that there were only a certain amount of etude books that you could choose from. So I just thought that everybody was able to just kind of select what etude books you wanted to, and then go from there. And, obviously the etude books that we've used in the past are wonderful resources. I use them, daily with all of my students at Texas State. But I didn't know that they were limited in terms of what we could use as selectors for these books. So that was one of the things that I learned this year about the process. So one of the snare drum books that I wanted to use was the Jacques Delacluse etudes for snare drum. And unfortunately, that wasn't on the list. But I think we're trying to get it to where it is one of the books that could be selected for some of the music. While I don't think that maybe a majority of that book is appropriate for high school students, I think that there certainly are a few etudes in there that are. And of course, I've seen through judging some individual solo and ensembles that some schools use, or just having a lot of students that come and audition at Texas State, a lot of high school students that play out of that book as well. I do think that there are, maybe 2 or 3 that would be wonderful as snare drum etudes for TMEA for our state. So at any rate, I did learn that about the books. And so the books that I chose that, obviously the Mitchell Peters book is a great book. And my students play at it all the time as well, just in lessons. And so I thought that I would pick this one because I liked that it kind of had everything. It had everything in it, I feel like. And, it certainly, I added some dynamics to it, obviously. But it had plenty of rolls. It had soft articulation, and it had forte sounds, which I feel like I'm super into tone and forte sounds, especially listening to students across the state whenever I judge state solo and ensemble and things like that. I think that's a really important skill and really important thing to learn for the development of the ear for percussion students, because a lot of the times as percussion students, as young percussionists, we have a tendency to focus on the physicality of our drumming, which is also important. But we have a tendency to focus on the physicality and the visual aspect of our playing. And sometimes what we miss the mark on is sound production and what that sounds like, especially at louder levels, louder dynamic levels, stronger playing. Um, you know, visually we know what that looks like, but do we know what that sounds like? And so I wanted the etude to kind of reflect that, and that's what I felt like number 19 in the Mitch Peters advanced book does a good job of showcasing some of those bigger sounds, as well as some of those bigger roles as well. And so, anyhow, that was what I thought about the Mitch Peters number 19. And it also has some ornaments in it, which, of course, we talked about a little bit. I've tried to do my best to make like these little shorter videos, my TMEA tips of the day thingies, because sometimes a lot of students, I think, they'll play through the music. Maybe they'll use the video tutorials, which I encourage you to do. But it kind of in the world that we live in right now, everything is like short spurts, and so I think a lot of the times with younger students, they get bored with watching a longer video, and it's like, well, when's he going to get to this? Like, let's have it, let's. And so I try to make these little short snippet things so that they spend a minute and a half going like, oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about the ornamentation in the snare drum etude, or let's talk about the trill in the two mallet etude, or whatever it might be. So I'm hoping that maybe those short videos are helping some of the students as well. Cool. Does anybody have any questions? I'd love to field some questions. I certainly also want to shout out Ensemble Block and Mr. Andres Aya, Way at Ensemble Block, all the guys there have been doing a great job about posting all the TMEA videos, resources for all the instruments, as well as jazz, mariachi, orchestra. I believe one of our jazz professors, Dr. Utah Hamrick, also did the jazz bass videos for the jazz area. And not that this is a whole other thing, but also because I'm a mariachi a mariachi musician and educator as well. I also did the guitarron videos for Ensemble Block as well. So I want you guys to go on Ensemble Block and check those out, because those are great resources. And certainly my sponsor, Innovative Percussion, who I endorse, and they support me. They are also housing the videos that I did through Ensemble Block and through Innovative Percussion. So you can go there as well. They just have the full videos, but Ensemble Block will have the full videos and the shorter lesson videos. And then, of course, Ensemble Block also has this, it's a great resource to be able to stop things, rewind things, highlight measures, do all kinds of things. So, I definitely encourage you to jump on there and use that resource. That's a great resource. And I will say this, I've had a lot of students email me or message me through Instagram, um, and ask questions there, or share their videos with me and say, here's my video. What do you think about this? Or, whatever that might be. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ensemble Block. You guys are awesome. And so those students have messaged me saying like, hey, can you check out my video? Let me know, blah, 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 maybe offer some advice, or they'll just say like, check out my video. And so I love seeing those. I love, watching the students play. I'm always happy to offer any advice that I can give that might help those students in the process as well. And I should say this, in that same process where the students are sharing their videos with me, excuse me, I also see a lot of students that sometimes, they'll play things a certain way. And so maybe I'll say like, hey, I noticed you played this like this. Maybe go watch the tutorial where I talk about trills. And so, you can get a better idea of how that trill should be played in a Bach piece. So, again, that's something that could be answered through watching the video, or if you had a question to like, I wonder why did he trill to that note? That doesn't sound correct, or whatever it might be. That could be answered there as well.
We have a question, sir. On
yeah.
this, you change your grip pressure on concert snare for different dynamics?
That's a great question. And the short answer is yes, I do. I do. Certainly when I play anything that's like forte, or I shouldn't say just forte, but I should address it like this. I would say 90 some odd % of my playing is very loose, very open. And so I open my hand quite a bit whenever I play. So I like to think about I like to think about like more like a middle fulcrum that I use. Of course, I use my back fingers to help me with some stuff. And of course, the front helps me with rolls, so on and so forth. But if I'm just playing, if I'm just playing like basically a legato stroke that looks like that, then my hand is super open. Okay. And this is why I think about, I don't know if you can hear this. A lot of people will do this when they match sticks. Well, one of my early teachers, Norm Weinberg, was an amazing educator. Actually taught me to hit the stick over your head when you're matching sticks, right? And you can hear the pitches directly. Anyway, at any rate, I like to hear the resonance of the stick, right? So the resonance of the stick will only come out if you're not gripping the stick too tightly. And so everything for me happens super open, whether it doesn't matter what I'm playing, even crash cymbals. Once the cymbals come together and I'm holding the cymbal straps like this, once the cymbals come together, there's kind of a let go that happens. So to answer Mr. Aya's question, yes, I do. I do change my grip pressure when I'm playing something super soft. I won't grip it necessarily tighter. I'll just put more flesh on the stick. So my hand will close up a little bit because the movement is a little bit, it's smaller. It's a smaller movement, right? So this will kind of happen, which means I'll just have a little bit more flesh on the stick, even though I'm still kind of initiating the stroke from the wrist here. So yes, more than likely, and it depends on the speed too. If I'm playing something a little bit faster, I may not hold on as tight. I'll still try to keep it loose, and some of these fingers will actually help me kind of do that motion as well. So I don't know if that is a black and white answer for me, but I definitely hold on a little bit more. So Trinidad Lopez, what mallets do you recommend for the 4-mallet etude, and would you recommend a graduated set? Yes, the mallets that I chose for that etude, and I'll go down this rabbit hole with you too. Innovative Percussion was amazing, and they sent me a ton of different mallets to use for the 2-mallet and for the 4-mallet. For the 4-mallet, I chose the 5002s and the 5003s. Now, what I chose for the bass was, I believe, the 3s. I can't remember if they go up or they go down, but basically the purple one is the one that I chose for my bass mallet. And then the other 3, I chose the same ones, which are the green ones. And those are all in the Artisan series. So Artisan series, check out the Artisan series from Innovative Percussion. I love those for a few reasons, but I kind of talked about this early when I did like a little unboxing thing. I love the weight that those produce. And again, this kind of goes back to my playing. I play everything since I try to play everything with the weight of the mallet to produce the tone. You see that it looks and feels like I let go a lot. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to utilize the weight of the mallet to come down and to help me produce the sound that I want. And so I feel like that Artisan series it has a great weight to it if you play similarly to that. Now, the Pius Changs also, I thought those are a great choice as well. I'll tell you the reason that I didn't choose the Pius Changs for the go-to mallet for that one. I love that mallet. It also is a heavier mallet, which helps you produce the weight the same way. But because the yarn is a little bit different, it has less synthetic material in the yarn. So what happens is sometimes I wanted a little bit more articulation, and I wasn't quite getting the articulation that I wanted. So the Artisan series, I felt like gave me that a little bit, that articulation a little bit more. Now, having said that, you have to think about your students. Can they handle a mallet that's heavy, that is that heavy? Do you teach them to play that way? If not, if you teach them to hold on more, then maybe that mallet isn't for them. I feel like, the IP 240s are always a great kind of go-to, kind of great starting point. If your students can play with the 240s and they're light enough for them to be comfortable and move through some of that stuff is difficult to move, like faster single alternating strokes with your interval opening up. That might be difficult for younger players to be able to do that and to open up. And so, because of that, I would say there are a few different things that you should try. Certainly, if you want a lighter mallet, I would go with the 240. I'm talking about the 4 mallets. I like the graduated set, so maybe you can even graduate that series if you wanted to. But I chose the Artisan series. That's what I liked. Cool. All right, and then going on to the next question: what set of fundamentals do you recommend for the snare drum etude? This is going to sound really kind of like a weird thing to say, but straight up stick control is going to help you a lot. You know, um, I love stick control. I do it. I feel like I do it every day. At least going into the office with a cup of coffee, it's great to like sit down before a lesson and just go boom and just play some stick control. Or when my first lesson comes in, maybe like one of the very first things we'll do is just play some stick control, big and open and loose. And I feel like you need that right away. You know, when you start that etude and you go, right? Well, you're playing big loose strokes already, right? I hope this isn't too loud or something. Somebody tell me if this blows at your sound. But those strokes, maybe you can see that. You know, I feel like those strokes already are big and loose. So stick control is great for that. And so that's what I like to use, you know, just to get my hands going. You know, you can play a lot of kind of stock, you know, maybe drumline exercises or whatever as well. You can make them kind of fit some of the timing things. You know, in the same thing, we have, you know, the passage I chose to make it a big crescendo. And, you know, you'll see in my video, I kind of pop a flam in there too, but the one that goes flam accents to flam taps. And I play that very loose where, you know, most young students will see something like that and they'll play that the way they want to play it in drumline with downstrokes, you know. And so that's another one that if you're playing something like, you know, remember that we all kind of remember that exercise, right? Well, you can kind of use it for this too, because you're playing flam accents going into flam taps. So that's a great exercise to utilize for this. And then you just add a crescendo and voila, you're into the etude. I would say for that one, the thing that is going to be that's going to be tricky is playing those flam accents and not have a two-heighted approach. Now you will probably might say like, well, it has an accent on it, right? Yes, except that when the way that we interpret accent sometimes in a concert setting is the way, at least the way I feel, like marching versus concert. I think about marching, I think about more as a two-heighted approach. And then when I think about concert playing, I really just think about like the accent is here and my dynamic is whatever this is, and here's the accent. Whereas, you know, if I'm playing like something marching, then it's a two-heighted approach, right? So for this, you might have the trick would be to understand how to teach that without stopping the stick so much and still playing and try to keep the other notes still a healthy forte, right? Or reaching, I don't know, actually, what is that? It might be like mezzo forte by the time you're reaching that crescendo. So, you know, that can get tricky, but that's, I hope I answered that question, right? That was about exercises. Okay, cool. Going on. So thoughts on American versus German grip for snare drum and or timpani. Okay, so well, this one's a little bit tricky because I feel like this is kind of developmental when it comes to where your students are exactly developmentally with their hands. Can they play? Do they play already, or do you teach like more of an American grip? You know, almost kind of like a quad grip, right? Versus like German grip where your hands are completely like turned over this way. Now, I'll say this. Here's my short answer. Pretty much I play American grip on snare drum because everything is kind of like big and loose. And then when I go to play anything that's soft or super controlled, like I said, I use a little bit more flesh on the stick. So it kind of turns into German grip. a little bit. Yeah. So now on timpani, it's a little bit tricky because I just play straight up French grip. Now, does that change sometimes? I like playing French grip because to me, you can use your back fingers to propel the stick. And of course, the lever is like your fulcrum, right? And so I like to teach, of course, the wrist action this way, as well as the fingers helping you with that motion, right? So it kind of looks like that. So I like to play French grip, and I'll go into why in a little while, but I like to play more French grip when it comes to that. Now, that changes a little bit when we start talking about articulation, when we start talking about like different things. And this particular etude in Vic Firth 1, which by the way, I played as a freshman in high school. That was the all-state music as well as Vic Firth 1. So I remember that fondly. And so I like using French grip because to me, it feels like once the mallet makes contact with the head, it's easier there's not flesh holding the stick back from popping up on its own, right? And so if your hand is turned over this way, I feel like there's just a little bit more right here in your hand as you're playing this way, or you're just holding on a little bit more to turn the hand over this way. So when you go to do that, there's just a little bit more flesh kind of holding the mallet down. Now, if you're a developed player, you see a lot of like European players, for instance, that play like this, right? And you'll see like, yes, the hand is turned over much more, but once it makes they're developed. They understand all of that. They understand those motions. They understand the sounds they're making. But for a 14, 15-year-old, they're not quite there. Although I did see a video of a 10-year-old playing this Beethoven excerpt, and I was like floored. Anyway, developmentally, a lot of young players don't understand that. So when their hand is turned over this way, they have a tendency to stop the stick, to stop the mallet. And that's why you see a lot of younger players kind of approach the timpani like quads, in the sense that either it's a two-heighted approach with accents and the other notes, or they just stop the stick. They stop the mallet. And the problem with that is that the head is so large, when we're talking about timpani, specifically the bottom two drums, that just a millisecond of the mallet staying on the head affects your sound so much. And I think timpani is one of those things that's one of the things that students make the worst sounds on at the beginning, because they don't understand the mechanics of it. Crash cymbals is another one, but we'll talk about that some other time. Anyway, so I prefer to play French grip. That's what you'll see in the video. Let me see. I hope I answered that question. How do you go about teaching touch changes on timpani? Okay, smooth sustain on a roll versus meaning clear articulation on the fast sextuplets. Yeah, that's tricky, and that's a kind of a crazy one to address, but I'll try to for sure. So what I think about is teaching touch, kind of like what I just talked about right now, which is like what happens when the stick comes in contact with the head, and what happens with your hand, and what happens with the mallet, and so on and so forth, right? So when that happens, I like to feel the mallet completely pop off. So I think I saw, maybe it was Tim Jennis, maybe did a video on this one time where one of the exercises that his teacher taught him to do was basically throw the mallet down. And I'm not going to do it here because the stick will make a bunch of sound, but throw the mallet down and then you just let it fly. You're throwing it down, or you're throwing it down and you kind of catch it with the other hand. And so the purpose of that is to really feel what that mallet feels like coming off of the head. And so to me, that's the most kind of true tone that you're getting out of the drum. Now, I say that, but it doesn't mean that holding on is bad, or that you shouldn't, or that timpani players shouldn't understand what German grip feels like, or so on and so forth. You know, if you read like the Saul Goodman book, for instance, he's talking about articulation. And that's one of the things that we absolutely need when we talk about like the sextuplet part around the drums, right? You need some clarity, you need some articulation, and there's some things that you can do because of that. And one of those things is holding onto the mallet a little bit more. So some of the things that kind of come into play a little bit is obviously like the distance between the drums is great, is huge, right? So you're trying to play these fast passages going back and forth to like drum 1 to drum 3, or drum 2 to drum 4, however you want to look at it. And sometimes, you know, if I'm holding my mallet here to get like the best kind of optimal bounce or whatever, sometimes if I'm playing that fast passage and I need the length of the stick to help me, and I'm holding onto the stick a little bit more anyway, what I'll do is I'll come back on the mallet this much to where I'm almost not even in a good balance point. But what that's allowing me to do is have length to be able to reach that, number one, and I'm holding onto the mallet for articulation anyway. And that's going to help my articulation sound, which is going to be to hold onto the mallet a little bit more, right? Because what happens is our resonance kind of goes down a little bit just from holding onto the mallet. So, okay. Roll. Yeah. So I hope I answered that question. I know these are like, I could spend hours talking about that stuff. It's like kind of the stuff that we cover in like a timpani lesson, for instance. Cool. Do you change hit spots or grip? Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. That's another thing that changes, that helps change articulation, right? So if we're looking at this as a timpani head, for instance, right? And our optimal spot for resonance is going to be like somewhere here, right? Relatively, because of the size, is somewhere here. You'll notice that if you go in like half an inch, just a little tiny bit more, you're going to get articulation. You're going to get more articulation. And so if you just go in a tiny bit, that'll change your articulation a little bit. Obviously, if you go too far in, then you start getting a tubby sound and you get a kind of an uncharacteristic timpani sound. But if you just change that a little tiny bit, you will get some articulation. I've seen people use moon gels for articulation. Of course, people use like regular timpani mufflers, which are okay. I think maybe in a perfect world, I may, like, if I could just take on and off those mufflers, right? Like kind of the ones that you see sometimes people use for the Carter March. If I could just pop on and pop off mufflers, sure, I would use dampeners, mufflers for the fast sextuplet stuff. But you're coming off of a roll into that fast sextuplet stuff, right? So where you would want more muffling is on the most resonant drum, and you can't do it because you're rolling on that drum. So that's like the list, the triage list of things that you're like, okay, I can do this, but then I can't do this. Then I do this, then I can't do that. And that's what makes timpani playing a little bit more difficult when it comes to making those choices. But yes, I do change the beating spots. And then on rolls as well, you'll see me sometimes on that video where I would typically like roll right here, and then maybe like I'll open up the beating spots to where they're like here instead, and then maybe come back in or something like that, So I do change that, especially when you're playing slower rolls and your hands are super easy and loose. You'll see on the decrescendo that I start the decrescendo fast because it's loud, and then as I decrescendo, I mean, my roll bass becomes super super slow, and then again coming out of that roll into the crescendo, um, then I increase the speed again as well. So yes. What exercise you are going to develop better tone? That exercise that I was telling you about, that I saw Tim Jennis do, where you're just dropping the mallet and letting it come back. If you watch like some European orchestras and they pop to the timpanus, you'll see a lot of like, where the mallet comes up like this, and then you see their hand like completely open up like this, coming off. And I think that's a great exercise. I think with timpani, it's so weird, but I think with timpani, we jump in too fast, too soon, right away. And you always hear like these old school stories of people going to study with, Fred Hinger or Saul Goodman. And you hear these stories of like their very first lesson was like hitting one drum with one mallet. And that was the entire first lesson, and I think we miss the boat on that sometimes, because that has to do with sound, or if you watch the Evelyn Glennie TED Talk from, I don't know, forever years ago, she talks about like one of the first lessons she ever had was with her teacher taught her how to listen, right? And I think that's super important, especially when we're talking about timpani. Everything else, obviously, but also, definitely much more with timpani, because we're more, we're worried about like them playing region music right as seventh graders. Or I guess, in my day it was like all city music, and you're already like starting to learn how to like move around the drums, and you have to play around the drums, and you're not thinking about sound at all. You're thinking about just executing notes. And so sometimes it's good to just step back and be like, well, let's talk about sound. Let's talk about how you produce these sounds over these drums. So, yeah. And I think recording those sounds is a great idea. I would set maybe like your iPhone or whatever, like set it way, way far. I don't know, like 20 feet away or something like that. And then record some sounds and, say like, this is my articulation sound, and then play some stuff, or this is my legato sound, and play some stuff. That way you can always go back and listen to it and be like, is that the sound that I want to produce? Or your teacher can tell you, yes, that's the sound that you want to produce, or this is the sound that I want to produce, so on and so forth.
Hey, Bobby, I have a question myself. When it
Uh-huh.
comes to, what considerations, what tips can you give us to be able to bring the style across correctly? Are there any variations on your grip? Do you vary?
Sorry, the last thing I heard was, are there any variations on your grip? I didn't catch anything after that. I'm sorry. Gilbert, it looks like when you pop on that your mic looks like it's off, maybe. Okay. Well, until he gets back, I can field another question here. What exercises do you recommend for a student to develop better tone? I think that's what we're talking about right now, is just like understanding what this does, understanding, how my grip changes the tone of the sound that I'm making, right? So if I'm hold on to the stick, what sound is that making? I do it all the time on snare drum, and I just turn the snares off, but you can hear right away what happens when you hold on to the stick more or less, so on and so forth. Gilbert, you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, awesome. I apologize and keeps unplugging and plugging back in, so that's how come I have stayed away quite a bit for that. My question is, what considerations do you have as far as the two mallets to bring the maybe exercises that some of the students, particularly the younger ones, right, can practice to be able to develop that touch?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, Um, like I said, it kind of goes back to your ability to hold on to the mallet, or the amount you hold on to the mallet, more or less. Um, and so I don't know. I mean, I think certainly what will happen is that you see, I mean, there's just different schools of thought. I should say that first. So maybe you teach your students to really hold onto the mallet a lot, which is, you know, that's okay too, you know. Um, but I guess, in my opinion, what I think of, when I think of like a legato sound, is is that you're gonna have to let go of the mallet. And for young players, that might be a little bit of a challenge, but that might be also something that they develop, that helps them develop their sound. So I would certainly try to teach that, and just try to teach like kind of loose playing. As soon as they can do that, you'll see that again, this is my opinion, you'll see that their sound is going to open up much more. And I think really that that's like, something that is a direct, you get direct feedback from the bar right on top of the marimba, you know? So you hit it and you hold on, or you hold on a lot. I use this analogy with a bunch of things with my students, but I always think of something like a knob, and this is like all the way this way and all the way that way. And do both things. What does it sound like when I'm like squeezing the mallet? What does it sound like when I'm like completely letting go of the mallet? Where do I want to be there? Right? Do I want to be at 8 or 9? Do I want to be at 4 or 5? And listen to the sound. What does that sound like when you, as a judge or as a teacher, sitting 10 feet away from them? What sound is that producing? Is that producing the sound that you have in your mind's eye or in your ear? And how can you kind of calibrate that with your students? That's what that's my that's my thoughts on that. Um, Thoughts on audition strategies, or swing thoughts, or performance psychology for the upcoming high pressure auditions? Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing that, in I teach at a university, and so I don't teach these etudes the same way that I would at a university, because, and you guys that are high school educators understand what I'm talking about. Things are like black and white. And although I will say that that changes from panel to panel, you know, like I was talking about before, you sit there on a panel and everybody kind of agrees that, well, this should be interpreted this way or whatever. And all of a sudden that changes. So maybe this area versus that area is going to kind of interpret this like a little bit different. And then that gets a little bit shady when you get into the higher levels of the audition process. But anyway, at any rate, what I'm talking about is performance psychology is like that's a crazy thing to think about. And I've had a lot of students, even though I teach at university, I've always had students throughout the years, doing the all-state etude that'll just come to my home and study with me at my house. And of course, my younger son did the same process. And so I feel like I was like always kind of in touch with the all-state process and what it took for the audition, so on and so forth. And I always tell my students this: once you get to a certain point, there becomes something where you have to be okay with whatever run it was that you just put forth. So after the students learn all the etudes, and they might still be putting finishing touches on phrasing and some small, very, very detailed things, that's fine. But what I have the students do is, before school, let's say you have band fourth period, let's just say. But everybody knows that if you're a band kid, you're in there in the morning and then you're in there in the afternoon before you go home. So what I tell my kids is, go in there and you do one run of whatever it is you want to do. And if it's horrible, then you have to walk away from it. And if it's wonderful, then you have to walk away from it. Either way, you just get one run. Do one run. That takes you, 2 minutes or 5 minutes tops before you go to class. When you go home and let's say you're grabbing your stuff out of your band locker, out of the band hall, or whatever it might be, or maybe you're leaving and then you're going to come back for rehearsal later that day, marching band rehearsal later that day, or whatever it might be. Before you leave, do a run of whatever it is. Walk away from it, because you have to mentally be able to walk away from whatever run that was. And the more consistent that you become, the more consistent your one run is going to be, whether that's in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening before you go to bed, whatever that might be. But I encourage students to do that, certainly. Next question. What exercise do you recommend for formality etude? Actually, I address these in my little videos sometimes, in those TMEA tips of the day, because there are a lot of little things that you can work on. Certainly, a lot of what is happening is like interval stretching from here to here, right? So, check those videos out, because I did give like a couple of little exercises that you can do. But just opening and closing intervals, especially in your left hand, right? In your left hand, because you have, some interval things that happen as you're playing a double vertical stroke, right? That's happening. Or sometimes they're happening as you're playing like single alternating strokes, right? Those intervals are changing that way too. So that's what I would work on for the formala piece. The formala piece is super musical, but it's also tricky in a lot of different ways. You have double vertical strokes, you have single alternating strokes. You actually have lateral stroke at the end when you play the ripple. And so all the primary strokes of formala playing are in that etude, which is another reason that I chose that etude. Single independent stroke as you're playing through the minor section, right? All of those things occur, but I think the really trickiest thing happens when you're doing these interval changes, whether you're playing them as double verticals or single alternating strokes. So I hope that answered that question. As you're learning or going through the keyboard pieces, do you assess which measures are played over the resonators for a warmer tone and which measures are played off of the resonators for more articulation? Yeah, you certainly can. That's going to change a little bit. I'm a little bit careful to get so into that necessarily because of this. You're practicing that in your band hall, in your percussion room or whatever, right? And you change your beating spots for this articulation and for that articulation, and man, you have it dialed in. And then you go audition in somebody else's band hall. You don't know where the sweet spot is in that hall, or maybe it's on a stage. Sometimes even that happens. Anyway, the room changes, and now all of a sudden you're like, students might freak out because they're like, oh, now that articulation has changed, and I was like so dialed in, and now they're all of a sudden they're like in a different headspace because of that, right? So while I think that is very valuable, I think that factor is so movable, that it's kind of dangerous, a little bit dangerous to dial it in that much, knowing that that's going to change, not knowing how that's going to change. I hope that answers your question. Keeping acoustic changes in mind, what implements do you recommend for a drier, carpeted environment? I don't know that I would change those. I don't know that I would change the implements, because we're also talking about like what those feel like in your hands, and that would change a little bit. That would change. While it would change your sound a little bit, it's really going to change more of the feel of what's happening. So, at some point you kind of have to be married to what you would change, unless your students are like, oh, okay, I can just switch mallets, it's all good. Certainly, I wouldn't pick anything that's that much different, and if you're in a hall that has vinyl flooring or whatever it is that's on in most band halls. I think most band halls are carpeted, but the ones that aren't, you could always like stick a small piece of carpet under your instrument, or under your, under whatever instrument you're using. Probably not timpani, but that's what I would say about that. Like I mentioned before, with like the Pius Chang mallets, that I really loved the sound that I was getting, and that's why I used those when I recorded the 2-mallet piece, the Bach G. When I recorded the whole piece that's on my YouTube, I used those mallets because I really love the sound that I got out of those mallets, but it wasn't giving me enough articulation for the 4-mallet stuff that I felt like I kind of needed a little bit more of. So that changes, but also, those are things those are choices that I make as a player, that sometimes students, may not be able to handle that aural change. So. Cool. Are there any more questions?
It seems to be it for now. The last one was that one that you addressed, sir.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the questions that sometimes I discuss, we discuss through chats, is what type of fundamental exercises are we doing presently for the 4-mallet, for timpani, or for snare drum? What are you using to develop the roll so we can get a nice, crispier, a meaningful buzz roll, concert roll right on the snare drum, and those are the kind of stuff that I see a lot in our chats. Yeah. That's why I personally was asking some of those. Yes. Bobby, sometimes some students don't have these instruments, and what would you recommend? I remember Gordon Stout telling me once that what the student does away from the instrument is as important as what the student does on the instrument. So there are certain things that we can do when we don't have access to an instrument that we can still somehow keep the ball rolling forward. What what can you say about this? What considerations can you share with us?
Yeah, well, that's actually funny that you say that because that was my TMEA tip of the day today. I'm
Okay.
presently in a hotel room right now because I'm dropping off one of my kids at his school, and so um, I
Man.
knew that we were doing this. I brought my sticks and I brought my pad to be able to model some stuff, but also I brought my music, you know. And my tip of the day was, you know, sometimes you have to step away from your instrument. Perfectly okay. What you can take with you is your music, right? And so what you can do is you can mentally practice, or let's say you're not even really mentally practicing, but maybe you want to go in and make sure that you're playing the stickings that you wrote in. Make sure that, maybe you're working on a new sticking that facilitates something for you. Maybe you wrote that in. Maybe you'll see something that maybe you didn't catch before, and you can do that just by looking at your music, and you don't have to be in front of an instrument to do that. And so I think a lot of students, a lot of the times, we put that aside because we're like, got to learn it. I have to learn it. I have to learn it. I got to put it on the instrument. I have to practice it. I have to get 20 reps in today, whatever it is. And I think we don't step away from that and just look at our music more, often enough. So I think that's a great exercise to do. I don't know if this story is true or not, but somebody somewhere once told me a story that Keiko once learned an entire marimba concerto on an airplane flight.
You
That's
you
amazing.
know, it's funny that you're sharing that, sir, because I've heard the same thing.
Yeah,
I've heard the same thing that she did that on a flight and got off the flight, went to the instrument, and she was playing it. I was like blown away.
amazing,
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
I When it comes to that, I was looking at some research, and they did some studies on it. And this, what we do is kinesthetics, right? Yes, it's the mallet, it's the stick, it's the timpani mallet that's striking the instrument and eventually producing the sounds, right? But if you take those implements away, it's our body, right? It's kinesthetics, it's motions, right? Um, and On that topic, they did this study, and they had people actually work out and lift weights, and they had another group that just visualized themselves lifting weights and doing the workout, right? And they really encourage those people to feel the intensity, as intense as you would be, and as you're lifting the weights, mimic that,
Yeah,
actually put your body through that and feel that. And the thing is, they were not physically doing it, they were imagining it only. And at the end of the period of time, the people that were imagining it, they had muscle growth that was measured, and that was pretty incredible. um for me to see. So I personally encourage my kids to airband the piece a lot and sing it. Airband and sing, airband and sing as you go along with a metronome, and
hmm
sing it with the dynamics, with the articulation, with the phrasing in mind. Everything counts. And
hmm
I've noticed to some of the students that actually take it and run with it, I do see a difference in their performance. Like, it does do something for them.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think that's huge. I think that's huge. Um, this past spring, um, I was fortunate enough to play Porgy and Bess with the Austin Symphony. And, that's an excerpt that all percussionists, um, if they don't know, should know, obviously, right?
Yeah.
It's an important work as a percussionist, as a mallet player, definitely, And, I had studied it as an undergrad as well, and a little bit as a graduate student as well, but I'd never performed it, you know, and certainly an orchestral percussionist will go a lifetime and maybe never perform it, you know, and you know, not I'm not I'm not bagging on festivals or orchestral festivals where you play. But what I am saying is when you're getting paid to do a job, that's a lot different than playing in an orchestra at a festival or with your friends, where maybe like the stakes aren't quite as high,
Yeah.
And so I really felt like, man, this is like I've never played it before. Even if I had played it before with somebody, like this is different,
Yeah.
This isn't a professional orchestra where you're getting paid to do it, and we did it 2 nights. And one of the things that I thought to myself was like, man, I have to be able to play this and be so comfortable playing it that you can hear certain things go past your ears or hit your ears in a certain way, and you make those adjustments, and that's the hardest part, I would say,
Yeah.
especially about playing something like that. That's the hardest part. That's another thing that is like it's a movable factor.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going to happen that night,
Yeah.
maybe the violins feel extra energetic or whatever, or maybe they don't. And so, that's another thing that moves with you, that isn't the same as, okay, well, I'm going to play it for this orchestral audition, where you're just playing by yourself,
Yeah.
so yes, you have to put yourself in a situation where you're like extremely comfortable. And one of the things that I've heard before and I use to this day is that, if I can play something and have a conversation with you as I'm doing it, then that is the comfort level where you want to
Yeah.
be, because you
Yeah.
can execute and you can think about something else at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Um, it's the I know somebody was asking as far as like the mental game, the psychological game of it. I personally, when I started teaching, I noticed some kids were playing like this kid. In your mind, you would be like, yeah, this kid's gonna make state at one point, right? And they would go into the audition room and they would flub it, right? The nerves would get to them to the point that they would make a mistake, and then it would snowball. And you're thinking, man, like this kid has ridiculous skill. He should have advanced. But sometimes it's the mental game. And I think we do good in addressing that as educators. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of tools, a lot of actually, you're sharing your videos in the tip of the day, small snippets. There's a lot of videos from really good reliable sources that help us, as far as the inner psychology of helping our kids, stay on the front end of it, and be the total package. Because
Mhm.
the fact of the matter, it does happen, right? They need to be able to go in there and be, mentally strong and cold and tough and resilient if they make a mistake, right? So that they can advance. um, yeah. I see another comment here. How long have you been at Texas State? How do we find
Um,
out more Texas State if students are
Yeah.
interested in studying with you in the future.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
if I may add something before you answer that, Bobby, I've seen your product. I've seen your playing. I've seen your teaching. I've heard your concepts, and I've seen your product. I've seen some of your students, and they pack a punch. They're solid. They're solid. So, if students can find and parents can find a way to get them to you, I really recommend it personally.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, how can we get students to you, sir? That's the
Yeah,
question.
thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. Um, certainly at Texas State, I've been there for um, 20 years. 20 years. Two of those was as a graduate student TA, so I was still teaching there as a TA for 2 years, and then I got hired on when I graduated. And before then, I was a band director, percussion teacher as well, where I taught drumline and beginner percussionists, and I also conducted a band. I was never at a place where I only taught percussion. Everywhere I taught, I always conducted a band. There was a high school band or a middle school band. Um, and anyway, I've been at Texas State ever since, so 20 years, I guess. Um, and it's a wonderful place. It's in a geographically between San Antonio and Austin, which is a great place to be. We have, I don't know, maybe in the 40s, I want to say the percussion studio is. It's a wonderful environment. We have every type of ensemble that you can imagine that a percussionist would want to be involved in, not just straight up band. Salsa program is huge in our Latin music studies area. Steel band, of course, regular bands, concert band, orchestras. We have orchestra as well. Jazz. We have a number of jazz bands. And of course, I just mentioned salsa band, steel band. We even have a gamelan ensemble. We have a rock ensemble as
Oh
well.
wow.
So there's a lot of stuff to be involved in. And sometimes it becomes difficult because you're trying to get like percussionists to be able to experience all these things while they're there. And 4 years is not is just isn't enough time
Yeah.
to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we encourage our students to be able to be involved in as many things as they can be involved in. And I'm not even the head of our area. The head of our area is Mr. Gennaro Gonzalez, who's been there since I think 1985 or
Yeah.
84, something like that. He's the head of the area. Amazing. He's the principal percussionist of Austin Symphony. Amazing man, a great mentor as well. And Carrie Clear, who is also on the percussion faculty.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing as well. And she's been there. She was there a year before me. So we've been there ever since. So it's a good team. It's a great team that we all work together and, teaching all different facets of percussion. And, we just try to do our best and try to get these kids educated and get them out and get them prepared for what they're going to do, when they get out. So, yeah, I would, if you're interested in checking out txstate.edu, you just go to the Texas State website and you'll see, you can browse like the music website as well. And it'll kind of tell you everything that we offer and all that stuff. So yeah, certainly.
Awesome.
I would like to address a little bit of what James Harrison was
Yes.
saying. Drummers more so that total percussionists are often forced to air drum or practice with motion just for volume restrictions that might present themselves. Yeah. I definitely agree. And we end up doing this. Like a lot of kids sometimes do this stuff.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time to play, they get on a snare drum and let's say in concert band or whatever, and they want to play with the same motions, and all of a sudden like your sound is like triple forte or whatever it might be, right? So I think that happens more often than not. And so yeah, so I think that it's always it's always, I always advise to be able to play at all different dynamics and all different motions, whatever that physicality feels like. That's why like when Dre was asking about like how much stick or how do you hold on or let go or whatever it is. It's always wonderful to be able to for the percussionist to understand what that is. What does this feel like when I squeeze a stick or when I let go of the stick, or how high do I need to come off the drum, blah blah blah, all that stuff. One of the things that I want to talk about before that we didn't kind of cover was that away from the music, away from the instruments, a lot of the times what we don't do enough of is just listen, right? And so when you
Yes.
watch somebody play, we watch, and especially like with YouTube and all that stuff. But growing up, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the All-State etudes used to come on a cassette,
Yeah.
and that's all we had. If your band director got those,
Yeah.
if they opted to get those, sometimes they didn't even opt to get those, but if they did, you'd listen to them on a cassette, and you would be like, okay, well I guess this sounds this way, or why doesn't my snare drum roll sound like that? You
Yeah.
know. Um, and so now with YouTube, it's great to be able to watch, which is another important aspect. But when you used to hear something on a CD or cassette, or even I remember going to the music library at my school and like checking out a Gary Burton record and
Yeah.
listening to it at the library. And you just, when you hear, it's like reading a book in a sense,
Yes.
that like all you imagine all these things that you're reading. And it's the same way when you hear, like you don't know what's happening, all you know is what you're listening to, right? And so a lot of the times I think we get so worried about like, do I know all the music, I have to pass this off, I have to play this, I have to do this, all these things are in the way, and you just don't get a chance to like listen, right? Where can you listen? Well, you can listen on the way to a game,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I think that's a big part of what we miss sometimes. And in my opinion, that's the most important part, because listening is what's going to give us like the sound that we want to hear.
Yeah.
That's, it's all about the sound. I remember Norm Weinberg telling me, well, I don't, I don't know if I should say this, but he said you could play with the stick somewhere, another part of your body, and if it sounds good, I don't care. It sounds good.
Yeah.
And sure, there's technique involved and all that stuff, and all that stuff is super important, right? But in the end, what sounds are you making? Sometimes I watch, you watch like a trumpet player, and their embouchures are all messed up,
Yeah.
but they sound incredible.
Yes.
You're like, man, how do they do that?
Yes.
And so yeah, it always goes back to sound.
Yes.
You know.
It has to. I've heard it this way, and I share it to my students in the same way. You want to be able to hit the bullseye, but how are you going to hit the bullseye if you don't know where it is? So you need to hear. You need
Yeah.
to train your ear. Like you said, you would go and listen to those records. Now you have it on your phone. Put your earbuds. You'll hear it nice and clear. You can hear your playing on the etudes. There it is, right?
Yeah.
Now you know where the bullseye is at. Go practice. Go
Mhm.
shoot at it. Shoot at it. Right? Like strive for it. Yeah.
Yeah, try to emulate those sounds, and that's what I did when I would watch my teachers play. At least, I thought that I was making those sounds, or wanted to, and if I saw like the physicality of it, like did it mean that this was going to produce this sound, then that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, it's been amazing to have you, and hopefully it is the first of many. Um, we do have other streams coming in the pipeline for our viewers, and definitely would like to have you included and in some of those, and cover different topics. Maybe a
Awesome.
timpani masterclass.
Yeah.
Maybe a you know now that we're in the topic right now, that's everybody's thinking that we're thinking
Mhm.
marching band, we're thinking and we're thinking all state stuff.
Yeah.
That's public educators, at least percussion educators in public school. That's what's going in your mind, and
For sure.
the good ones are the ones that are always staying on the front end. Like, what can I learn that's new, so I can bring it back to my students and share it. And I
Yeah.
think this is great. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, sir, for accessing to do that. You're very helpful to our viewers. I asked them, hey, would you like to do a stream for VPF and cover the etudes? Boom! Like I saw that response really quick. Like, let's do it. So that tells the type of person that you are,
Yeah.
and I think that's has to do with the quality of the students that you put out. It tells the I was speaking to one of the ensemble directors for Spirit of Atlanta, and I was telling them, man, they're playing well, and he goes, yes, they are, and this was his response. We focus on two things. We focus on clean beats and being good people. That was his response, and that being good people came out of nowhere, and I was like, that's right,
Yeah.
and I say this because that's what I've noticed with you. Every encounter I've had with you is like that. So
Well, thank you. I
thank,
appreciate that very much. And
thank
and
you for being so sharing.
and whether it's in a professional setting, um, playing, in a performance setting or an educational setting, um, that's how I was raised. And my father was also a music educator,
Oh
uh,
wow.
and a musician, and so I was always raised to respect people, and to give them whatever I could give them, offer whatever I could offer. And that's how I look at education. Um, I don't I don't teach high school anymore. You know, I teach kids that go to high school, and they come over to my house for lessons and things like that. And I always try to teach them how to get to where they're going themselves, you know, and obviously how they get there is up to them, you
Yeah.
know. But I think being a good person is one of the most important things, you know. Um, Certainly, we always encounter. I mean, not always. Sorry. Sometimes we encounter some people that maybe don't look at life the same way, and that's none of my business necessarily. All I know is that all I can do is offer what I want to
Yeah.
offer. Um, and I didn't have to say yes to this project.
Yep.
And I don't do it because I'm recruiting for Texas State. You know, I don't, honestly, we've never been a school that is huge on recruiting. I feel like students have come to our school for one reason or the other, but it certainly isn't because we're out there solely to promote ourselves to get students in there. And that's also because I don't necessarily want students to come to our school that I've like fed them this
Mhm.
hook, line, and sinker, right?
Yeah.
Want for them to have seen us at a band thing or whatever where the marching band plays, or maybe they've seen a video or something of our ensemble or something, or an ensemble performance somewhere or something like that.
Organic. Yeah.
Yeah, just, and that's just my viewpoint. you know I love sitting in auditions every year and watching students come in, and I love when students contact me and say, hey, can I get a lesson, or I'm trying to thinking about going to school there or whatever it might be. I think all that is amazing, and I wouldn't have taken this project on if I didn't feel like I had something to offer back, because that process gave me something when I was young. And going through that process, it taught me some things as a young percussionist. Um, and certainly, my son went through it as well. Um, pretty successfully as well. But it also taught him some things, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
also taught me some things. And you, as a father of a percussionist as well, right, know that the way that probably the way that you had to teach some of the things to your own son taught you how to grow as an educator too.
yeah.
Because that's a
Yes, sir.
whole different perspective when you're teaching your own kid something. And I wasn't his only teacher, but I was certainly the one that was around
The
24 hours
most.
a day, right? And
Yeah,
so, all those things, I thought about when I was asked to do this, and I'm super honored to be able to give back to the process, and hopefully, I hope that the things that I picked, I hope that students will grow from just learning and working on these etudes.
yeah,
Know, one of the things that I have talked to the TMEA people about a little bit, and this is, I'm sure this will be somewhat controversial, but I
yes,
also think that music should change, if
yeah,
not every round, at least another round
yeah,
of music, um, rather than work sitting on 6 etudes or 4 etudes for 6 months.
yeah,
So I don't know. That's still kind of up in the air and up for discussion.
yes.
That's certainly something that I'm pulling for. Um, at least now that I have an ear to bend a little bit at TMEA. But I really appreciate all the time, Gilbert, and thank you for having me on your I don't
You're
know, I
welcome,
guess
man.
call it podcast. I don't know,
I
but
don't
I
know. I don't think we even know how to call it. Yeah, it just comes from the same place as you're speaking, Bobby. We want to share the the tips and the passion and the educational side of it. And this all started with Valley Day of Percussion that had started about close to 40 years ago with Robert Boteo.
wow.
And then it was a live event every year. And then from there, um, during COVID, we were kind of forced to do it virtually. And that's where the streaming came. And a lot of artists and world class educators like yourself
That's
have
awesome.
always been willing to participate. And I think, like, why not? Let's just keep sharing it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm always happy to do it, and this is a great thing, and I congratulate you on your success
Thank you.
of this as well. And I think that's wonderful. That's something that certainly I didn't have as
Yeah.
a kid growing up, as a high school student, um, even as a beginner. Like, my band director wasn't a percussionist, and the only one of the only percussionists in our town. I was able to take like a few lessons that we could afford, because we couldn't even
Yeah.
afford like regular lessons either. But
Yeah.
this gentleman was kind of a family friend and a musical from a very important musical family in Corpus Christi. And his son, who later became my friend as well, who is an amazing educator himself, Roland Chavez, in the Austin area. Um, but his father was who taught me some things when I was a young percussionist, and I thank
Yeah.
him. Rest in peace, um, Mr. Chavez, and he was amazing. But we didn't have anything like this where
Yeah.
So what you're doing is amazing, and I think
Oh,
that
thank you, man. Thank you.
brings a lot
Thank you.
of great things to the valley, and now you're here. Anybody could watch it anywhere and
Yeah.
everywhere. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bobby. Any last words you'd like to share with the students? Um, you know, that are about to embark in auditions here soon.
Yeah, I do actually have one last thing to say, and that's this is going to sound crazy
Those are
because
the better ones, sir.
yeah, right, because we spend so much time on this and so much energy and focus on these four pieces, and those four pieces, and they open doors for you, certainly, but um, those four pieces are not what is going to make you a great musician.
Yeah.
And certainly being in the all-state band or orchestra or percussion ensemble or any of those all-state ensembles is a wonderful experience, and it's a great accomplishment, um, that you can accomplish, hopefully, but it will also it also doesn't define who you are as a musician. So I think the process of learning those things is and could be a greater learning experience than the
Yes.
result. And so, I say that because, so many students, me involved, me, I'm in that list too.
Hmm.
I missed the all-state band both of my last years in high school by two chairs. And, for a long time, it was like, it's soul crushing, you know?
Yeah.
But I was able to go on and do some other things that were amazing and have
Yes.
great experiences and all that stuff too. So, don't let it define who you are as a musician. Um, and I think, while I think it's important, it's not the only thing. There are so many things. Here's the other thing that I want to encourage kids to do is go out and find some of these things that will also open other doors for you. Festivals that happen in the summer, not just I don't mean camps like at colleges. I mean like percussion festivals or music festivals that happen in other parts of the world. My son was involved in something called Young Arts, which is an
Wow.
amazing organization, um, and that ultimately opened a door. I mean, he had to do all the other work involved. That opened some other doors for him as well. Um, and you just never know where those things are going to take you.
Yes.
So I encourage
Yes.
you to do that.
Awesome. 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 Well, there you have it, guys. Educators in Texas, and obviously, this is information that any educator around the world can actually use. But a lot of this stuff is geared towards Texas all-state auditions, and sometimes in competitions, there's little things that need to be accounted for in the game, right? To be able to advance and do well. Uh,
Mhm.
amazing stuff, sir. Really appreciate having you.
Yes,
Looking
sir.
forward to having you here, um, a lot more.
Awesome.
Um,
Anytime.
we
I
can
love to do it.
we can also we would love to have you in our live in-person event at some point.
Sure. That would be great too. Definitely. And you can always post my info. Happy to get, emails or texts or whatever it is, however it is that you want to contact me. I'm always happy to answer any questions or anything like that. So
Awesome,
thank you
awesome,
again, Gilbert. I appreciate it.
awesome. Thank you, sir. Guys, there it is for today. Keep up to date with our socials. There's some really neat streams coming up. William Mersch, he's going to be covering a timpani clinic. Billy Cobham, drum set clinic. Joe Hobbs, rudimental clinic, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Oh, Tom Hannum as well has said that we are going to be doing something. So that's just a tidbit of what's coming ahead. Guys, have a great one. Have a great year. If there's anything we can ever do for you, please feel free to reach out. See you next time, guys.
Cool.
Yeah. Dude, you know what?
What's that?
My microphone kept unplugging. I would see it on the
Oh,
screen.
is that what it is?
I yeah.
Thing, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, that would happen, and I would see obviously that the mic was off or whatever.